With smug grins on their faces, my husband and his mistress had the audacity to order me out of my own house and demand a divorce. I didn't argue. I simply gathered everything and walked away in silence. An hour later, they were left in shock when they realized the plan I had been setting in motion all along. Hi, I'm Ava Monroe. One moment, I was the devoted wife of a powerful man. The next, I was the woman who turned betrayal into the ultimate comeback. But how did I do it? How did I take everything they thought they stole from me and make them regret ever crossing me? If you love stories about justice, revenge, and the kind of plot twists that leave you speechless, stick around and let me know in the comments. Would you have walked away or would you have fought back? Drop a like in the comments if you're ready for this wild ride. And if you don't believe in karma, tell me why. Let's debate. I remember that morning like a flash of lightning, a moment so searing it still burns in my memory. I was standing in my luxurious New York City apartment, the familiar comfort of my home shattered by a scene I never imagined. With smug grins on their faces, Brandon and his mistress, Elena, stood before me. Their arrogant voices cut through the silence as they ordered me out of my own home. I felt a chill run down my spine as they demanded a divorce with an ease that defied the gravity of our shared past. In that instant, I knew my life would never be the same. The apartment, once a symbol of security and success, now felt like a battleground. I surveyed the modern, sleek lines of my living space, the minimalist decor, the soft hum of the city outside through the large windows, the gentle glow of the early morning light. Yet beneath the polished surface, tension simmered like an undercurrent, waiting to erupt. Everything around me seemed to mock what I had lost in that single devastating moment. I remember the way Brandon's eyes flashed with defiance as he dismissed my protests with a mere shrug, and how Elena's smile was as cold as the marble floors beneath my feet. I didn't argue. Instead, I silently gathered my belongings. Every object I touched, each photograph on the wall, every cherished memento, seemed to whisper reminders of better times now tainted by betrayal. I felt a profound, wrenching sorrow mix with an unexpected spark of resolve deep within me. As I walked out of that apartment, each step was heavy with both grief and determination. I could almost hear the echo of my own heartbeat, steadying me against the shock of humiliation. An hour later, as I stood a few blocks away on a busy Manhattan street, I glanced back at the building with a cold, clear clarity. I knew then that they had no idea what I was truly capable of. They were too caught up in their own arrogance, too blinded by their false sense of power to realize that the seeds of my meticulously planned revenge had already taken root. In that moment, my mind raced with possibilities. I recalled every detail, the exact words they used, the dismissive tone in Brandon's voice, the unsettling calm with which Elena carried herself. I began to document it all in my head, vowing that I would remember every nuance. This was not just a personal loss, it was the spark that ignited my journey toward reclaiming my power. I decided then that silence would be my ally, and careful planning my weapon. The morning air was crisp as I made my way to a small cafe to sit and collect my thoughts. Sipping on a bitter coffee, I couldn't help but feel both the sting of betrayal and a rising determination to turn my pain into strength. I began to envision a plan, a way to gather evidence, to expose every hidden secret that Brandon and Elena thought they could bury under lies. I recalled the photographs, the digital records, and even the small details in our conversations that now took on sinister meanings. Every memory was a clue, every whispered word a piece of the puzzle that would one day reveal the full truth. Before leaving the cafe, I took a moment to gaze out at the sprawling city skyline. The rising sun painted the buildings in hues of gold and pink, and despite the chaos of the morning, there was an undeniable beauty in the promise of a new day. I knew that my journey toward justice was just beginning. I had felt the raw, biting pain of rejection, but with that pain came the strength to fight back. I resolved to document every moment, every detail, and to transform this heartbreak into a powerful testament of resilience. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed with an urgent notification. I read the message, a carefully composed email addressed to Samuel Pierce, my trusted attorney. It was time to act. With my heart pounding, I hit send and stepped out onto the busy sidewalk, knowing that this small act of defiance was the first step in a much larger battle. I didn't know what the future held, but I was certain of one thing. I would reclaim my life, one determined step at a time. I can still feel the sting of that morning as I settle into my chic yet now somber home office. The elegant space, once a sanctuary of creativity and comfort, has taken on a heavier tone, reflecting the weight of the betrayal I now face. My apartment, filled with modern art and sleek furnishings, contrasts sharply with the turbulent emotions roiling inside me. Every high-tech device on my desk, a laptop blinking with new emails, a smartphone buzzing incessantly, reminds me of the relentless pace of New York City, a place where truth and deception often collide under the glare of digital scrutiny. The first real crack in the facade of my husband's lies appeared unexpectedly. As I rifled through the clutter of receipts and bank statements left on my kitchen counter after that devastating confrontation, one particular document caught my eye, a dinner for two receipt boldly printed with the name Elena Price. In that moment, the evidence of infidelity and financial deceit slammed into me like a cold wave. I felt a mix of sorrow and a fierce, burning determination to uncover every hidden truth. It was as if the receipt itself whispered that nothing could remain buried forever. I sat down at my desk, the glow of my computer screen reflecting off my tear-streaked face. My fingers trembled as I opened my email, where messages from Brandon had grown increasingly evasive. His vague, contradictory responses left me with a gnawing suspicion that his public demeanor was nothing more than a carefully maintained lie. I recalled fragments of our recent conversations, his deflections, the hesitations in his tone, and knew I could no longer afford to ignore these signals. Determined to gather every scrap of evidence, I began the painstaking process of compiling receipts, bank statements, and even covert photos I'd taken over the past few weeks. I meticulously scanned each document, recording dates and details, piecing together a puzzle that I hoped would expose the depth of Brandon's betrayal. As I worked, my mind was a battlefield of emotions. The acute pain of shattered trust warred with a growing resolve to reclaim my dignity and control over my life. In those quiet moments, I felt an inner turmoil, every memory of lost love clashing with a fierce determination to rise above the pain and transform it into a weapon of retribution. I felt as though each piece of evidence was a tiny act of defiance, a silent promise that I would not be made a victim. Throughout this ordeal, my daughter Emma remained a quiet yet steadfast presence. Though she was still young, her eyes betrayed a surprising maturity. I caught her glancing at me from across the room while I organized my files on the laptop. During one such moment, we exchanged a few soft words. Her gentle, "Mom, I'm here for you," resonated deeply with me, reinforcing the unspoken bond between us. In those brief moments, her supportive, cautious expressions spoke volumes. They were a mix of empathy and a burgeoning resolve to stand by me. I could tell she was beginning to understand that our family was changing and that her own journey toward self-discovery was just starting. Late one afternoon, as the light faded and the digital hum of my devices filled the silence, my phone rang. I answered with a steady voice, determined to get to the truth. On the other end, Brandon's voice wavered as I pressed him with pointed questions about the receipt and the discrepancies in his stories. His half-truths and evasive answers did little to quell my doubts. Instead, they only intensified the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface. I pressed him relentlessly, my words laced with a calm but unmistakable fury. His responses, disjointed and feeble, finally collapsed under the weight of my scrutiny. That phone call marked a turning point. It was the moment when I knew I could no longer trust his words, and that every lie was a challenge I was ready to meet head-on. After hanging up, my hands still trembling from the confrontation, I realized that I needed professional help to secure all the evidence I was gathering. I decided then that contacting Samuel Pierce, my seasoned attorney, was not merely an option, but a necessity. I carefully reviewed every document once more, ensuring that nothing would be left unaccounted for in this battle for truth and justice. Sitting back in my chair, I felt a surge of determination mixed with an undercurrent of sadness. The betrayal cut deep, but it also ignited in me a resolve to transform my personal loss into a strategic fight for accountability. I began drafting an email to Samuel Pierce, outlining all the evidence I had collected and my plan to pursue legal action. My fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as I detailed every painful discovery, every evasive remark from Brandon, and the cold, incontrovertible proof of infidelity represented by that damning receipt. In a quiet moment between the tapping of keys and the occasional buzz of my phone, I caught a glimpse of Emma's profile on my screen. She was watching me, her expression one of quiet support and newfound understanding. For a brief moment, we exchanged a knowing look, a silent conversation that bridged our hearts and reassured me that together we would navigate this painful journey toward healing. In that brief glance, I recognized that our journey, though fraught with betrayal and sorrow, was also paving the way for a shared path toward healing and self-discovery. As I finalized the email and hit send, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I knew that this was only the beginning of a long and challenging road, but for the first time since that fateful morning, I felt a spark of hope. The evidence was secured, and the plan was in motion. I sat back, the soft hum of the New York evening wrapping around me, and allowed myself a moment of introspection. My world had been shattered, but from its fragments, I was determined to build something new, something stronger. I still feel the raw sting of betrayal pulsing through my veins, fueling every thought and decision. Today, I marched into Samuel Pierce's sleek New York law office with a determination that left no room for second-guessing. The polished glass and modern design of the office did little to mask the gravity of what I was about to undertake. Every step I took resonated with a mix of righteous anger and cautious hope. I could almost feel the pulse of the city outside, an incessant reminder that in New York, every secret eventually comes to light. Sitting across from Samuel at a minimalist conference table, I spread out the damning evidence before him. My hands trembled slightly as I laid out receipts, bank statements, and digital records that painted a damning portrait of my husband's deception. Samuel's steady gaze told me he understood immediately the magnitude of what I was dealing with. His calm, measured voice broke the silence. "Ava, this isn't just a personal matter. It's a corporate scandal waiting to explode." His words confirmed for me that my plan was both timely and necessary. I recounted every painful detail in my mind as I spoke, my voice low and resolute. I explained how that dinner for two receipt, emblazoned with Elena Price's name, had shattered my illusions and spurred me into action. Samuel listened intently, occasionally nodding as if every piece of evidence I presented reinforced his belief that we could turn this betrayal into a turning point. The tension in the room was palpable as he began outlining a strategic legal maneuver, a plan that involved not only a formal lawsuit, but also discreet leaks of information designed to undermine Brandon's carefully constructed facade. As our discussion deepened, I felt the weight of each decision. The plan was risky. Revealing even a fraction of the evidence to Victor Reynolds, the formidable CEO of Brandon's company, would be a public declaration of war, a move that could irreparably damage reputations and shatter lives. Yet as I looked into Samuel's eyes, I saw a reflection of my own determination. I knew that if I didn't take this bold step, I would forever be trapped in a cycle of humiliation and inaction. I remember the moment of truth vividly. Midway through our meeting, as Samuel laid out the details of the plan, I felt a surge of raw emotion welling up inside me. The air in the office seemed to thicken as I leaned forward, my decision crystallizing with a clarity that startled even me. "I'm going to risk everything," I declared, my voice steady yet charged with passion. In that instant, I resolved to reveal a critical piece of evidence to Victor Reynolds, a move that would force Brandon and Elena into an inescapable internal investigation within their own company. Samuel's approving nod and the soft clack of his keyboard as he typed up notes on our strategy filled the silence. He explained, "This exposure will trigger a chain reaction. The board will have no choice but to launch an investigation, and once that begins, there's no turning back." His words bolstered my resolve, and I felt the scales of justice beginning to tip in my favor. Throughout the meeting, I couldn't help but feel Emma's presence, even when she wasn't in the room. Later that day, as I walked out of the office, I recalled her quiet, determined face, the same face that had watched me compile evidence in silence. Her unspoken support reminded me that this battle wasn't mine alone. It was a fight for our future, for the integrity of our family, and for the truth that had been so ruthlessly hidden. After our meeting, I spent a few moments alone in the bustling corridor outside Samuel's office. The hum of conversations, the distant sound of taxi horns, and the rhythmic cadence of footsteps all blended into a backdrop that made my mission feel both monumental and intimately personal. I stood there, breathing in the cool New York air, and allowed myself a rare moment of vulnerability. I was scared, yes, but that fear was now interlaced with an undeniable sense of empowerment. I had made my choice, and with it came the realization that I was in control of my destiny. Before leaving for the day, I quickly made a call to Emma. In our hushed conversation, I could hear her tentative optimism. "Mom, are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice a blend of worry and admiration. "I've never seen you this determined," she added softly. I reassured her, "We have to do this, Emma. It's the only way to make things right." Her silence at the end of our call spoke volumes. She understood, and she was ready to stand by me no matter what lay ahead. As I hung up, my mind raced with the possibilities and the risks. I knew that revealing the evidence to Victor Reynolds was a gamble, one that might expose us to further complications. Yet, in that charged moment, it felt like the only viable path forward. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, and I was acutely aware that this was just the beginning of a long, grueling battle, a battle that promised to reshape my life entirely. I left the office with a renewed sense of purpose, the images of that critical meeting and the promise of impending justice etched into my mind. Every step on the busy New York sidewalk reminded me that in this city, where power and deception dance in every shadow, truth still has a way of emerging victorious. And as I merged with the crowd, I knew that my counterattack had been set in motion, and there was no turning back now. I can still feel the chill of that night as I pace the floor of my dimly lit apartment. The soft hum of the city outside, with its flickering lights and distant sirens, sets a somber backdrop to what I know will be the most defining moment of my life. Tonight, I have called Brandon and Elena back here for one final confrontation, a reckoning I can no longer postpone. The apartment, once a sanctuary of warmth and comfort, now feels like a cold arena where every shadow whispers of past betrayals. I've spent the day stewing in my emotions, each memory a spark, that has ignited the fury inside me. As the clock inches toward the hour I've set for this confrontation, my heart beats rapidly in anticipation, not out of fear, but from a determined resolve to reclaim my dignity. When the door finally swings open, I see Brandon and Elena hesitantly step into the space. Their faces, usually so composed in public, betray hints of unease. I greet them with a gaze so cold it seems to pierce the very air between us. In that moment, I no longer see the man I once loved or the woman he once claimed to cherish. I see only the deceivers who have shattered our shared life. The tension in the room is palpable. The soft lighting casts long shadows that dance along the walls, mirroring the tumult within me. I clear my throat, and with a voice that trembles not with weakness but with a steely determination, I say, "You made your choices. Now live with them." My words echo around the room like a verdict, a final declaration of independence from the lies that have haunted me. Brandon tries to speak, his voice faltering as he searches for a defense, but I cut him off. "Save it," I say, my tone brooking no argument. "I'm done with your excuses." Elena's eyes widen slightly, and for a fleeting moment, I catch a glimpse of regret there. But it's too late. I have let all my pent-up anger and sorrow spill out in that charged exchange, every word a testament to the years of betrayal and heartache. As our voices clash in that confined space, the air thickens with raw emotion. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat affirming that I am finally taking control. Every word I utter is laced with the pain of my past, yet it resonates with the promise of a future built on truth and self-respect. Their carefully maintained facades begin to crumble. Brandon's eyes dart nervously, and Elena's smile, once so smug, falters into something resembling remorse. For a long, excruciating moment, silence falls. It's the silence of a house that has witnessed too much, where the walls seem to absorb every accusation, every hurtful word. I stand there, my gaze unyielding, as if daring them to deny the reality we all now face. In that silence, I sense the collapse of the lies that once held us together. Slowly, Brandon and Elena retreat into the corners of the room, their defiance replaced by a dawning confusion and regret. I watch them, feeling a mix of triumph and sorrow, a bittersweet victory over a chapter of my life that I can never reclaim. My thoughts race. This isn't just about exposing their betrayal, it's about finally reclaiming the power that was stolen from me. Even as I stand resolute, a part of me mourns the loss of what we once had. But the pain is a necessary fuel for the transformation I've begun. I turn away from their broken forms, my eyes falling on the framed photographs and mementos that now seem tainted by deceit. I know that this confrontation is just the beginning, a prelude to the unfolding battle for justice that will soon reshape everything. In a quiet moment of introspection, I catch a glimpse of movement through the slightly ajar door. There, Emma stands, a silent observer whose youthful vulnerability and emerging strength speak volumes. Her presence, though wordless, reassures me that I'm not alone in this struggle. I see in her eyes the spark of determination, mirroring my own resolve to forge a new path. As the emotional storm gradually subsides, I feel a surge of empowerment coursing through me. I have laid bare the truth, and in doing so, I have reclaimed a part of myself that had long been suppressed. With every breath, I feel lighter, as if the weight of betrayal is finally beginning to lift. I know that the road ahead will be fraught with challenges, but tonight, I have taken the first step toward a future defined not by pain, but by resilience and hope. Standing there in the dim glow of the apartment, I allow myself a brief, introspective moment. The city outside continues its relentless pace, indifferent to the personal battles waged within its heart. Yet, in that shared silence between us, I sense that this is more than an ending. It's the seed of a new beginning. My journey toward healing and retribution has only just begun, and I am ready to face whatever comes next, one determined step at a time. I still feel the tremor of my personal betrayal echoing in every fiber of my being as I step into the sleek boardroom of a towering New York City skyscraper. Today is not just another day, it's the day I finally turn the tide. With the damning evidence clutched tightly in my hand, I join Samuel Pierce and my daughter Emma as we prepare to present our case to Victor Reynolds. The room pulses with urgency. Every polished surface and modern fixture serves as a silent witness to the high stakes at play. The boardroom's atmosphere is charged with conflicting energies. Modern art adorns the walls, and glass tables reflect the steely determination etched on every face present. Every detail of this space, from the gleam of its polished surfaces to the crisp scent of freshly printed reports, reinforces that here, truth is both celebrated and demanded. I take a deep breath as I recall the countless sleepless nights spent sifting through receipts, bank statements, and covert photographs. Each piece of evidence is a reminder of the deception that has cost me so dearly. Today, I am here to expose the depths of Brandon's betrayal and Elena's complicity, a corporate reckoning that I have meticulously orchestrated. I can still hear the echo of my own heartbeat as I begin my presentation. I stand before the board, my voice steady despite the tumult inside. As I gaze out at the sea of scrutinizing eyes, a surge of anxiety mingled with fierce determination washes over me, each heartbeat a resounding promise of retribution and the weight of my painful past driving me forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin, what you are about to see is not merely a series of documents, but the undeniable proof of fraud, infidelity, and financial deceit. As I speak, I watch Samuel Pierce nod in agreement. His experienced eyes convey the gravity of our findings. Emma, though young, stands by me with an expression that mixes cautious hope and silent strength, a quiet promise that our future will be forged in the flames of justice. The turning point comes when Victor Reynolds himself scrutinizes the evidence. His brow furrows as he examines each detail, and I sense the weight of his decision pressing upon him. In that charged moment, he orders an immediate internal investigation. I feel a surge of vindication. This order is not only a repudiation of Brandon's and Elena's lies, but also a declaration that their time of unchecked power is over. As the meeting unfolds, tensions flare. Heated debates break out among the board members. Some question the validity of the evidence, while others are quick to point out the moral and legal implications of the revelations before them. I listen intently as voices rise, each argument sharpening the focus of my resolve. The corporate elite, so accustomed to wielding power without consequence, now find themselves embroiled in a battle of ethics and accountability. I watch as conflict of interest, power struggles, and deep-seated moral dilemmas come crashing to the surface, exposing the frailties of a system built on deceit. The climax of the meeting arrives when, after much deliberation and impassioned debate, the board votes overwhelmingly to initiate legal action against Brandon and Elena. In that decisive moment, I feel an overwhelming mix of triumph and bittersweet relief. Their misdeeds can no longer be hidden behind a veneer of corporate success. The scales of justice are finally beginning to balance in my favor. In the immediate aftermath, a palpable silence falls over the room. Brandon and Elena, though not physically present, loom large in the collective consciousness of everyone in that boardroom. I know that their futures now hang in the balance, suspended by the weight of the investigation that has been set into motion. I feel a renewed sense of control. Each document, each testimony has contributed to this turning point. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night now seems justified in the light of this victory. Yet even as I savor this hard-won success, a subtle twist emerges. Amid the flurry of discussion, a mysterious document surfaces, a confidential file hinting at further hidden scandals that may ripple through the corporate world. My pulse quickens at the thought. While today marks a significant triumph, it also opens the door to questions I had not yet anticipated. What more lies beneath the surface of this carefully constructed empire of deceit? Standing in the midst of that charged boardroom, I feel the weight of destiny upon my shoulders. I have exposed the lies and ignited a spark of accountability that will reverberate far beyond this meeting. As I leave the room, the cool New York air greets me like a promise that my relentless pursuit of justice is just beginning. I step out with my head held high, buoyed by the knowledge that every piece of evidence, every painstaking detail, has paved the way for a future where truth prevails and the corrupt are held accountable. I still remember the weight of that moment as I stepped into the grand, imposing courtroom in New York. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, a palpable mix of hushed murmurs from the public and the intense scrutiny of the media. Every detail of the space, from the gleaming marble floors to the towering columns and the crisp uniforms of the bailiffs, reminded me that today was the day when every lie, every deceitful act would be laid bare. Taking my seat beside Samuel Pierce, my steadfast attorney, I could feel my heart pounding in rhythm with the silent drum of justice. I had spent countless hours gathering every scrap of evidence, receipts, bank statements, emails, and digital records that expose the full extent of Brandon's betrayal and Elena's complicity. Today, all of that painstaking work was about to come under the unyielding gaze of the law. The inciting moment arrived when the prosecution introduced a trove of financial documents and electronic communications into evidence. I watched as the skeptical eyes of the jurors absorbed each detail, the weight of the proof undeniable. In that instant, I felt the room tighten around me as every whispered comment and exchanged glance served to amplify the gravity of our case. When my turn to testify came, I walked slowly to the witness stand, my steps echoing in the vast silence of the courtroom. Standing before the judge and the assembled jury, I took a deep breath and began my testimony. I trusted him, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within, and that trust was shattered by a series of lies, deceit, and betrayal. Each word was a release of the pent-up anguish that had accumulated over the months of hidden truths. I recounted the painful details of that fateful day, the moment when I was unceremoniously cast out of my own home, and how every subsequent piece of evidence reaffirmed the betrayal. The tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable as the defense attempted to undermine my recollections with half-truths and evasive remarks. I listened to their feeble attempts to recast the narrative, and with every passing moment, I felt my resolve harden. There is no room for half-truths here, I declared firmly, my voice rising with conviction. The evidence speaks for itself. In that charged moment, I saw the doubt flicker in the eyes of the defense, and I knew I had struck a chord of undeniable truth. Samuel Pierce's calm and articulate questioning further cemented our case. His presentation of the meticulously compiled evidence left little doubt about the extent of the financial and personal deception orchestrated by Brandon and Elena. Every document and every electronic message was a brick in the towering wall of evidence that I had helped build, a wall that would now protect the truth. The climax of the proceedings came when, after hours of heated exchanges between the prosecution and defense, the judge delivered his long-awaited ruling. His voice, imbued with a solemn authority, declared that the evidence was irrefutable and that the actions of Brandon and Elena were indeed a gross violation of trust and ethics. In that moment, as the courtroom erupted into a brief, stunned silence, I felt a surge of catharsis, a mix of vindication and relief that washed over me like a tide. As the judge's words settled in, I could see the effect on Brandon and Elena, even though they were not on the witness stand. Their once assured postures had crumbled under the weight of the verdict. I sat there, absorbing every syllable of the ruling, knowing that this was not merely a legal victory, but the beginning of the end for the treachery that had haunted my life. The courtroom, with its grand architecture and the stern faces of the jurors, had become a battleground where the truth finally emerged victorious. In the moments that followed, I felt a profound silence descend over the room, a silence that spoke of finality and the promise of retribution. My mind raced with thoughts of the long road ahead, of the inevitable fallout that would reshape the lives of all involved. Yet amidst the uncertainty, there was a resolute certainty within me. I had reclaimed a part of myself that had been lost in the shadows of betrayal. I had transformed pain into purpose. Walking out of the courtroom, the cool New York air greeted me like a gentle embrace, a reminder that life continued beyond the confines of that solemn hall. Every step I took felt like a stride toward a future where justice and truth would pave the way for healing. Even as the echoes of the trial lingered in my mind, I knew that this was just one battle in a much larger war, a war I was now fully prepared to fight, with every ounce of strength and resolve I possessed. I can still recall the moment when everything started to unravel, a day that began with the lingering echoes of courtroom drama and quickly spiraled into a maelstrom of scandal. I was at home when my phone began to buzz incessantly, each notification a harbinger of deeper betrayal. News outlets were abuzz with reports that newly surfaced evidence was revealing additional layers of deception by Brandon and Elena. It felt as if the very foundation of their carefully constructed world was crumbling before my eyes. The revelation came in the form of a confidential file, a trove of explosive documents that laid bare Elena's long-hidden financial misdeeds. I remember staring at the screen in disbelief as details of covert transactions and misappropriated funds flashed before me. This wasn't just another piece of evidence. It was a Pandora's box that threatened to dismantle everything Brandon and Elena had built. The file immediately sent shockwaves through both the corporate and legal worlds, and I knew that our fight was about to take a dramatic new turn. Outside, New York City seemed to transform overnight. The bustling energy of the streets and media centers, usually filled with the hum of everyday life, now pulsed with a frenzied urgency. Digital billboards and news tickers screamed headlines of scandal, and every cafe and subway station buzzed with gossip. The city's dynamic chaos, so unpredictable and raw, perfectly mirrored the crisis unfolding in the hearts of those who had once trusted Brandon and Elena. I watched the unfolding spectacle with a mixture of vindication and cautious optimism. While the public was now consuming every detail of the scandal, I felt a profound sense of relief, knowing that my painstaking efforts were paying off. At that moment, a surge of satisfaction mingled with lingering sorrow washed over me as I witnessed the collapse of the facade that had once shielded their treachery. Emma, ever my silent pillar, showed her support in subtle ways, her eyes reflecting a blend of shock and budding resilience as she absorbed the gravity of the situation. I noticed the way her gaze lingered on the news reports, her young mind processing the chaos with an intensity that hinted at a maturity beyond her years. Even from a distance, her presence reminded me that our journey toward justice was not mine alone. As the days passed, the leaked file escalated the pressure on Brandon and Elena. Their attempts to cover up their misdeeds began to crumble. I could sense internal conflicts surfacing within their corporate ranks as executives scrambled to distance themselves from the impending fallout. It was clear that every defensive maneuver they made was failing under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. I could almost hear the panic in the whispered conversations of board members and see the strain etched on the faces of those once loyal to their cause. Then came the moment that crystallized it all. During a televised press conference, I watched as a high-ranking executive, visibly shaken by the mounting scandal, revealed that the evidence was far more damning than anyone had imagined. In that charged atmosphere, Brandon made a final, desperate attempt to justify his actions. His words, once so confident and rehearsed, now stumbled and faltered under the relentless scrutiny of the facts. I sat there, every muscle in my body tensed, as his feeble excuses crumbled into nothingness. In that instant, I felt a deep personal vindication, a bittersweet mix of triumph over the deceit that had once shattered my world and an aching sorrow for what had been lost. His and Elena's defenses were utterly obliterated, leaving them exposed and defenseless. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Legal and financial repercussions began to cascade upon them, and I could see their reputations, once so meticulously maintained, disintegrate before the eyes of an outraged public. The victory in the courtroom had now extended its reach far beyond my personal battle. It was a sweeping reckoning that left no one unscathed. Yet, as if the universe had one more twist in store, a tantalizing hint of an even larger conspiracy emerged. Rumors began to swirl about high-level corporate figures entangled in the deceit, their names whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. This revelation, subtle yet potent, promised that the scandal was only the tip of a far more intricate web of corruption. The notion sent a fresh surge of adrenaline through me, a mix of excitement and foreboding. I felt a stirring within, a mix of cautious hope and steely resolve to peel back every layer of this deception, no matter how deep it ran. I sat by my window that evening, the city's neon glow mingling with the fading light of dusk, and allowed my thoughts to drift. Every headline, every snippet of conversation echoed the reality that the battle against deceit was far from over. Emma's quiet determination and the unwavering support of allies like Samuel and Victor gave me strength. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we were now standing at the precipice of an even larger storm. In a quiet moment, I sensed a bittersweet connection with Emma. As she absorbed the chaos, I saw in her eyes the spark of a generation ready to learn from our struggles and rise above them. As I reflected on the cascading events, I felt a renewed resolve stirring within me, a fierce, unyielding commitment to uncover every hidden truth, no matter how deep the conspiracy might run. The evidence had dismantled Brandon and Elena's facade, but it had also opened a door to darker corridors of corporate treachery that I was determined to explore. In that moment of quiet intensity, I understood that our journey was evolving. The shock of public disgrace, the relentless media scrutiny, and the intricate power struggles within the corporate world had all converged to set the stage for the next phase of this battle. The scandal was far from a closed chapter. It was an invitation to delve deeper, to challenge the very systems that allowed such deceit to flourish. I still remember the feeling of heavy anticipation as I stepped into the elegant banquet hall that evening. The air was filled with soft music and the gentle murmur of conversations, an atmosphere that stood in stark contrast to the darkness of betrayal I had once known. Tonight, the hall glowed under warm, inviting lights, its decor reflecting both modern sophistication and a sense of renewed hope. I knew this moment would mark not only the end of a long, arduous battle, but also the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I took my seat at the long table, where familiar faces of friends, colleagues, and supporters gathered to celebrate a hard-won victory. Every smile and nod in my direction reminded me that I was not alone in this journey. Samuel Pierce and Victor Reynolds sat beside me, their quiet pride and steady support evident in every glance. And there was Emma, standing tall and confident, a living testament to the strength that had grown from our shared struggles. Even as I glanced around the room, I could sense that the ghosts of the past, once embodied by Brandon and Elena, were now reduced to cautionary tales, their power broken by the undeniable force of truth. The turning point came earlier that day when the decisive legal verdict was announced to thunderous applause and sighs of relief. In that moment, the public acknowledgement of Brandon and Elena's downfall resonated not only within the corporate world, but also within my very soul. I could still hear the echoes of that moment, a collective exhale of justice, a long-awaited vindication for all the years of pain and betrayal. The ruling had not only dismantled their carefully constructed empire of lies, but had also given me the strength to begin healing. As I sat back and allowed the festive ambiance to wash over me, my mind drifted back to the turbulent journey that had led to this celebration. I recalled the dark, lonely nights spent poring over evidence, the countless moments of heartache when I felt isolated in my struggle, and the relentless drive that pushed me to transform my personal loss into a powerful force for change. Every bitter memory, every tear shed in silence, had paved the way for this triumphant moment. Then came the climax of tonight's event, a moment that would define the future. With a deep breath and a steady heart, I took center stage. The room hushed as I began to speak, my voice clear and unwavering. Tonight, I announced, we celebrate not only a victory over deceit, but the rebirth of our dreams. I paused as I unveiled my new venture, Resilient Designs. The name alone resonated like a promise, a declaration that from the ashes of betrayal, a new, beautiful future could emerge. As I described my vision for this business, a fusion of art and innovation that would empower others to reclaim their strength, the applause grew louder, punctuated by tears of joy and nods of understanding. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of empowerment, as if every fragment of my broken past had been reassembled into a mosaic of resilience and hope. Throughout my speech, I could see the emotions in the faces of those who had gathered. Samuel's approving smile, Victor's dignified nod, and Emma's confident gaze all spoke of a shared journey toward redemption and renewal. I spoke of my trials and the long road to recovery, not with bitterness, but with the honest vulnerability of someone who had learned to transform pain into purpose. Every word was a testament to the strength we found in unity, the courage to stand up against injustice, and the unwavering belief that even the darkest moments can give rise to a brighter future. After my speech, the celebration continued in a gentle, unhurried manner. I mingled with guests, receiving heartfelt congratulations and quiet assurances that this was only the beginning of many positive changes to come. Amid the laughter and soft clinks of glasses, I felt a deep sense of closure, an understanding that while the scars of the past would always remain, they no longer defined me. Instead, they had become the very source of my newfound strength. As the evening drew to a close, I found myself standing near a large window, looking out over the glittering New York City skyline. The night was cool and inviting, the stars overhead a silent promise of endless possibilities. In that reflective moment, I felt a profound sense of peace and anticipation. I knew that every ending is simply the start of something new, a truth that filled me with hope and the courage to embrace whatever the future might hold. I stepped away from the window, a gentle smile playing on my lips. The battle had been long and painful, but today marked a turning point. I was no longer defined by betrayal or loss. I was defined by resilience, by the relentless pursuit of truth and the promise of a hopeful new beginning. With each step I took out into the night, I carried with me the lessons of the past and the bright promise of a future built on strength, unity, and the unwavering belief that every ending paves the way for a new start. As I reflect on everything I've been through, from the crushing betrayal to the hard-won victory, I realize that every hardship has taught me something invaluable. I've learned that the darkest moments can be the catalyst for our greatest transformations, and that true strength lies in our ability to rise, rebuild, and reclaim our dignity. My journey has shown me that justice is not only about holding others accountable, but also about nurturing our own resilience and embracing a future filled with hope. I invite you to think about your own experiences. Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to redefine yourself? What did you learn from that moment, and how did it shape the person you are today? I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments. Tell me where you're from, or if this video touched your heart, leave a 1 below to let me know. And if, for any reason, you didn't resonate with my story, please share your perspective as well. Your feedback means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey and want to see more stories of resilience and transformation, please subscribe to my channel and join our community. Together, we can learn, grow, and find strength in every chapter of life.